chapter 3.9, part 7. Yeah. So pop art is happening and kind of overlapping a little bit, beginning in the late 70s. They're fed up with abstract expressionists, partly too with the abstract expressionists. They're kind of the macho boys' school, making huge paintings with lots of paint and expressing themselves, okay? And don't get me wrong, like almost every one of these art forms we ever cover, I love it all. But I'm putting on the hat of being a pop artist and not liking the abstract expressionists. I kind of dislike pop art, frankly. But anyway, we're Warhol and we're Lichtenstein, and we're kind of like, oh my gosh, enough already. And this idea of interacting with this, communing with paintings and looking at just one singular color. So they kind of get over that and they want to look at recognizable subject matter. And they want to look at things that they understand. And they want to combine life with art. And they want to borrow imagery that's all around them in popular culture, advertising, and they want to blur this line of fine art and high art. And that's still going on today, and that's too hard to explain. But anyway, that is what's happening. So Warhol uses some appropriation. Now you have to go back and think about Duchamp. One of the things we didn't look at in this piece is he submits a picture of the Mona Lisa with a mustache on it. Okay? And that is one of the artworks that pisses off the art world, okay, back in the teens or 20s. I don't exactly remember what year it was. So Warhol takes up Duchamp a little bit here and also takes the Mona Lisa and then replicates it with silkscreen imagery on canvas. So he's just doing one after the other. And you can kind of see how it's sort of like he reuses the ink to the part where it starts to fade out, almost like a moving picture that we would see. It sort of gets blurry. But that's part of the charm, I guess you could say. But he's trying to take recognizable imagery and turn them into fine art in a different context. So he's kind of sticking his nose up a little bit, and this is called 30 are better than one, and this is sort of echoing consumerism, where you want to have more and more and more, and you want to have you can never have enough, if that makes sense. So this is a depersonalized, mass-produced piece. It's a silkscreen. It's no longer an original piece like a Mona Lisa would be. So it's changing it from unique, high artwork to mass-produced, screen printed, and it's borrowed. We talked about that. Here's our original, of course. So Lichtenstein takes on a different direction. He's looking at comic books, and he's deciding that he really likes this strange imagery of these dark lines with the ink. This is like usually ink with color filled in. And then these Ben-Day dots. Now, Ben-Day dots are something that newspapers used for a long time before there was digital. And there was a really interesting piece. I really loved it. It was a portrait of Abraham Lincoln. Totally different thing, not a pop art piece, but with bubble wrap injected with ketchup. Oh, I just thought it was genius. So anyway, these are Ben-Day dots, and when you look at it far enough away from it, it's like optical mixing. So this becomes kind of a pinkish color at a distance. But his pieces are massive, and you can't really ever get far away from them. And you do see the Ben-Day dots. You see the way that the commercial printing is being used. But he uses existing comic book things, and then he changes the wording. This one doesn't have any text, but a lot of his do. So he's challenging traditional subject matter. And again, it's representational, it's not abstract, and it's very commercial and recognizable. So that is pop art in a nutshell. Now, the pop artists love Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns, but they weren't exactly pop artists, but some people will call them that. So anyway, there's a bunch of people that also fall in those categories, but Warhol, Lichtenstein are the big ones. Minimalism is a reaction, here we go, we're rebelling again, against abstract expressionism and pop art because we don't like either one of those things, we've decided. So we're going to get into some non-representationalism, kind of really actually following abstract expressionism, with shapes and basic monochromism and that kind of thing. And it doesn't want any emotional meaning like the abstract expressionists had. It's kind of minimalism, really, if you look at the looks of it. And we'll go to Donald Judd. He is Mr. Minimalism. He's the height of minimalism. And this work is all in Marfa, Texas, if you should ever decide to go. And they fictionalized him in a series, I think it's on Amazon or Hulu, but it's called I Love Dick. They changed his name from Donald to Dick. And it's a story that a woman wrote about her experience in Marfa. Kind of humorous, very dark though. Anyway, so we are dealing with abstraction. We're dealing with geometric shapes for the most part, very simplified forms. But it's unemotional. The minimalists are sick and tired of hearing about this deep meaning that is happening in abstraction, and they don't take to the pop artists with their goofy commercialism and their recognizable imagery, their representational figures. So they're all about using manufactured materials or things that you could get at the hardware store, kind of, or to construction stores, kind of a place where you would get steel and you could get plexiglass and you could just make things out of those materials. So it is a commentary in a way of where we are in history. We're using some of these man-made materials that are readily available. Now, he had these actually manufactured and made these steel boxes, and then the plexiglass fit into them, and it's colored plexiglass, but they were arranged in this way, I believe, from his directions. So his hands aren't really even on this work, so that's somewhat new, that he's asking, he's not even part of it. And Jeff Koons, who's a controversial artist today, sort of takes a page from this book. So they're industrial looking, they're boxes he ordered from a factory, and then somebody installed the boxes to his specification. So he's not even really that involved in the making of this work. So he's downplaying any of this underlying message or any kind of creativity, almost, you could say. Dan Flavin, another artist, using fluorescent bulbs that you would readily find at any hardware store. I believe when these are replaced, these are still things you go to Lowe's or Home Depot and you just replace them. The coloration, I think, had to do with the metal fixtures. I haven't seen one of these in a while. I think you could get these sort of like gels to cover the fluorescent tubes, but you walk into the space and he's playing around a little bit with also what becomes the light and space artist, which we don't get into in this chapter, and he gets sort of adopted by those guys as well. But this is a minimalist piece. All it is a bunch of fluorescent lights. So clean geometric quality, this is more of an installation. He gets more into installation art where you're in the space and you're affected by the light, and the glowing light also transforms the space. But also he's kind of into the idea that your eyes adjust by staring at these different colors. Now we're going to get into postmodern architecture. So remember modernism with its geometric shapes, tons of glass boxes, right? That's basically what we have. And then again, everybody gets sick of looking at the same old, and they decide to challenge that by mixing it up. And they feel that modernism is idealistic and inaccessible. Now, modernism has come back, mid-century modernism has come back in a big way. If you ever look at Dwell magazine, that's the be-all, end-all on that. And Palm Springs is a destination for mid-century modernism. But in fact, modernism didn't really work that well. A lot of it was inaccessible. It wasn't really very warm and fuzzy. There were some hard couches in that era, let me tell you. Hard couches, the furniture was not comfortable, it was not livable. A lot of modifications had to be made to those homes. So postmodernism is going to start to get into some different designs. This is a modernist piece. We're looking at 1924, Schroeder, and this goes back to the Bauhaus. The Bauhaus was an early precursor in the 20s, and this is in the Netherlands, but it was in Germany, and they had all these ideas about the perfection of geometric shapes, and you can see Mondrian's influence here. Black line, white area, and then a little bit of color. And some of others of Schroeder's houses have blue and yellow. I believe that's blue there, but it's a little bit hard to see. So simplification, and come 1960, we're getting a little burned out on it. So we're changing into Michael Graves. This is the Portland Public Services Building. Now, he's not the first one to change things up, but he is one of the early ones. And there were some complaints about this building that it didn't function very well. And I have to say, I find a lot of Michael Graves Target design vacuums and various things in the thrift store quite frequently. But anyway, he's got some posts here, columns, and kind of our capitals. If you remember our capitals back from our Greek and Roman architecture, so we have kind of some columns with capitals, and then an echo of that shape up here of the capital. Not really functional. It doesn't really do anything, but it's decorative. Now, if we look back at international style and we look back at modernism, everything was clean and it had to have a function and so on. And here we have kind of this stepped bottom, and we have a bunch of a break in the different patterns of windows. So that's the beginning of postmodernism. Not my favorite example, but you get the idea. It's not a clean box with windows, glass and steel anymore. We're getting concrete, and we're getting tile and different things in here. Okay.